Hello and welcome to Talking Point here on WESN Content Capital. I am Keaton Shaw.
And my name is Sean Michael Small, and of course this is a show where we have the important discussions of the day, and we have quite a few to get through today, Keaton.
Quite a few, in fact. Sometimes I think there's not enough time in the day just to get through all that is happening here in TNT. But with the time that we have, let's squeeze in as much as possible. So let's start with your daily review. Well, let's start with a story from the Police Complaints Authority, who have initiated an investigation into the alleged missing rounds of ammunition that was in the arms of the TTPS actually. They were seized last year during an audit of a central businessman. Now, during that audit, several firearms as well as ammunition, roughly 1,200 rounds, was seized from the businessman, but were then ordered to be returned to him by a court judge. After that, his attorney, the businessman's attorney, wrote to the police stating that roughly 500 rounds of ammunition were missing. Now, an investigation has been launched by the Trans-Tobago Police Service on the part of the Commissioner of Police, Edward Christopher. The PCA has now saw it fit to get involved and have also stated that similar investigations have taken place in the past following alleged missing, and I cannot stress on the word missing, ammunition.
And I think it's safe to say at the end of the day what has come out of the investigations in the past. And this is more or less, I do believe, similar to our crime situation, the reason why regulations, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily some malicious action by somebody in the TTPS. It could just be fast and loose with regulations. Oh, we need ammunition. This is being held. He's not getting this back anyway, let's use it. I mean, there's a whole host of scenarios that could have happened. Regardless, the point is, it seems as though there was a breach on the accountability side of things. You know, this is confiscated. What are we doing with it? How are we storing with it? Who's responsible for it? All of these things need to be answered. And one could argue that this is just par for the course in TNT to having scenarios like this. Again, why do we think the TTPS is, ironically, any different or any special? The problem, of course, is we don't see results. Why do we honestly think we're going to see anything significant out of this? I think even, and maybe it's a question of time, look at the situation, the obvious situation with the death of PC Gilts, or at least it's one of the most obvious situations in the public sphere that we've seen. What has come from that? Well, have we heard any progress? I mean, I think the officers were taken off were put on desk duty, but beyond that.
I think for me, the biggest thing is this is something that has occurred since last year. The attorney on behalf of the business wrote to the Trans-Tobago Police Service, but it was only a matter that was raised in public by Opposition Member of Parliament Ruel Monilal on Sunday. The thing for me is that given the length of time from which it was actually returned and then reported missing, and now that the investigation has been launched, so many things flutter around my head. One, we don't have a ballistics testing unit here in TNT, or let me rephrase that, an adequate or efficient ballistics testing unit here in Trans-Tobago. So what if that ammunition actually got into the wrong hands? And that is the thing that I'm concerned about, because who is to say that the Trans-Tobago Police Service are the best or the most appropriate hands to store this evidence in? Because the thing is that as a police service, that is part of their responsibility. Yes. That is part of their operations.
They're supposed to be.
That does not necessarily mean that they're the best out of it.
But this is the thing. That's like saying, well, our teachers are not the best at teaching our students, so let's get a different group of people to do that. Well, no. Technically speaking, the proper solution is not to replace them. It would be to fix the issue as to why they're not most appropriate. Of course, it's not so simple, right? There's a lot of issues with regards to our meritocracy, our accountability. This is societal-wide. So to some extent, yes, the police do a specific function. You have to hold them specifically responsible for things that they do or do not do that they're supposed to be doing. The flip side to that is, to some extent, we have allowed this to, in various degrees, to infiltrate into our society, and we need to realize it's not just a police problem alone. You know, we might have to start there. We might have to, that might be the focus point of the topic, but there's a wider issue, right? As ASP Ali says, criminals, but also the police, come from society.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. Well, let's move on actually now with the next story. And well, I suppose it's a bit of a lighter story given that we started off with the PC investigation. But Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has left Trinidad and Tobago and is heading to Guyana actually today, where the Guyana Energy Conference and Expo is due to commence. Now, he is traveling with the Minister of Energy and Energy Industries, Stuart Young, in the meantime, actually, Colm Imbert will act as Prime Minister. Now, the Prime Minister is also expected to deliver an address at the Expo, and given the recent good news with respect to the Dragon Field and the license from the United States, we are sure to see, I am sure to see diplomatic ties between Guyana and Trinidad and Tobago strengthen beyond what it currently is. Now, after that, on the 15th, which is tomorrow, the Prime Minister will travel to the Bahamas for the annual meeting of CARICOM, let me give you the exact thing, the 44th regular meeting of the Conference of Heads of Government of the Caribbean Community. This CARICOM meeting will include a focus on CSME, climate change, agriculture, food security, security for the region, as well as health. Heads of government such as Justin Trudeau will also be in attendance. I think, Sean, given the current climate around the world, I think we're going to see a lot more. I suppose diplomacy is always in the air, but the strengthening of ties, especially as you say, the allies.
So it's a catch-22. COVID and then the situation in Ukraine has actually shown weaknesses of how our global structures are. Because when I was going, even in secondary school, doing economics in secondary school, globalization for principles of business, it was one of the big buzzword topics. You know, every academic field will have buzzwords in certain areas, right? That's very popular and being pushed. The whole idea is we specialize in X, you specialize in Y, so we maximize output globally and we trade. The problem is when trade breaks down, all we have is X, all you have is Y, right? Man cannot live on bread alone. I mean, nutritionally you need a balanced diet, but then there's also a whole host of other goods and services, medical supplies, you need building supplies, a whole host of stuff for society to function. And the breakdown of trade kind of showed, well, maybe we can't just only specialize and only do one thing and expect somebody to trade with us with the rest of our needs, which is why one of the things that they're talking about is agriculture and food security with regards to the CARICOM meeting in the Bahamas, which ironically at the energy conference in the Hyatt a couple of weeks ago, or a few weeks ago, President Irfan Ali, he did bring that up. So it's an interesting thing, because while I'm saying, well, look, globalization has its faults, it's not to say that you're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The EU has its faults. CARICOM is going to have growing pains to continue to grow, even from, some people would say, well, we haven't really implemented it that well. But there are, especially for smaller countries like us, the potential benefits will outweigh the negatives. The trick is to overcome the cultural differences.
I think this entire conversation surrounding climate change, food and agricultural security, it has dominated the conversation with this meeting over the last few years. Interestingly, I wouldn't say anything has ever come out of it. You mentioned flaws in global structures. Well, one of the regional structures in CARICOM and CSME is very much flawed. And I keep seeing that a lesson of which CSME can take is from the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. CSME has not been fully implemented. CARICOM in itself has not been fully implemented. So to what extent is there a regional identity? To what extent is there regional collaboration?
The issue is, And I think there's always going to be this competing focus of state sovereignty versus cultural identity. See, if you take the EU, Europe is not all one culture. And you could keep your cultural identity. We kind of do that in Trinidad already. You kind of see that in the United States as well, in different ways. But, you know, we have East Indian culture, we have Amerindian culture, we have African culture, we have, to a lesser extent, Chinese and Syrian culture. So the foods are there, some of the religions are there, some of the cultural traditional dresses there, etc., etc. Some of the holidays are there. With the EU, the problem is it comes back down to now, okay, but we still look at our national identity as sovereigns and want to make determinations based off of that. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing with the EU is they're so large. That's where it gets trickier. Somehow the United States was able to kind of figure it out, but even in the United States, you have the agenda of the country and then the agenda of the individual states that to some extent is always competing. CARICOM, maybe we don't necessarily have that big of a challenge because the nations are smaller. So the national identity and is not that big of a driving factor. In part because we're closer, so we share more things in common. But people in Spain and people in Scandinavia, they have very, very different concerns on certain issues.
Interestingly, one of the flaws of CARICOM is national identity and sovereignty.
I know.
Scholars have argued that it is actually one of the biggest setbacks. Everybody wants to retain their sovereignty, and everybody wants to have their cultural identity. But whilst we tout it as a melting pot, the Caribbean, you know, and Trinidad and Tobago in particular, it has also turned out to be one of our blocks.
I think the key for something like this is for nation states to retain their cultural identity and to try to figure out how much and as much as possible of our sovereignty we can give up if we want this single entity to work. Because to some extent, the national identity probably will have to shift to the singular entity, to the overall body. Because right now, the EU, you literally have your national parliaments and your EU parliament. And sometimes the EU parliament looks like a mess. I want to say something that I can't say on TV, but the long and short is it looks like a mess. Because you have people who are anti-EU being elected to the EU Parliament because of that dichotomy is so stark.
I suppose the best example of that was Nigel Farage, but
basically, yes.
But I think the bigger question, folks, is you know, member states of CARICOM should ask, what is the point or purpose of CARICOM? Does it really serve what it was meant to? And what is the point of being a member of CARICOM? I mean, let's face it, those are things that should ask. I mean, free trade and free movement across the islands is perhaps the biggest plus. But overall, I don't see it being a success.
Everybody needs to ask themselves this question: do I want to be a part of CARICOM?
And everybody will respond with, yes, I want to be a part. I want to be a part of CARICOM on the face of it because diplomatically it sounds good.
But I'm talking about real practicality. And if the answer is a surface level answer like that, then the answer really and truly is no. It'll only work for those that want to make it work.
Does Trinidad and Tobago want to be a part of CARICOM?
That's a good question.
And a good example of that is the CCJ. You know, so anyway, ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break here on Talking Point, and when we return, well, we'll get into some more topics. Stay tuned to the program.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The best birthday gifts are at thebesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays, 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is there no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the right and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
One in 8 women will be diagnosed with breast cancer in her lifetime.
A genetic type of hereditary as well, breast cancer,
Right.
which is due to abnormality in the genes. People are born with that abnormality in the gene, and they have that predisposition to developing cancer at an early age.
And as mom and a sister, a strong genetic component in my family for breast cancer. Should I start screening in my 20s? What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
Well, the tragedy that we've seen in Turkey and Syria is just another lesson that a lot of us around the world probably can learn from. And that is, currently speaking, the situation as it revolves around their building codes, their standards and practices, and what was done, potentially politically, to fast-track certain construction projects, much to the dismay of those who have survived and those who have not survived this tragedy. It's time to cue this.
Is this kind of more systemic issue of building codes. The last time Turkey had a major earthquake was in 1999, and 2 years later, in 2001, earthquake codes, building codes were put in place so that all new buildings must get this, be built in accordance with engineering rules to make it so that they will not collapse in an earthquake. And unfortunately, a lot of the buildings that we're seeing that have collapsed are new. They are built after 2001. We were just at a hospital that was heavily damaged, and now all the patients have been taken outside to tents, but that hospital was built 2 years ago.
This agency, the Turkish Disaster and Emergency Management Agency, AFAD, that Mr. Erim just mentioned a little while ago, the local headquarters of this building got completely demolished. So certainly many of the public buildings that had been constructed under Erdogan's watch were also damaged or demolished completely as a result of this earthquake. Just a little while ago, you asked whether or not these contractors should have a clean conscience. I think the real question to ask is whether or not these politicians, including President Erdogan, his local politicians from his ruling party, civil servants who ended up not necessarily regulating these buildings, do they have a clean conscience? I think they need to, because we're confronted by a political regime, particularly its leader, who has accumulated more and more powers over the last years, but somehow he fails to take any responsibility for pretty much anything that happens in the country.
Long cracks zigzag menacingly across the walls of this apartment complex. Built less than 2 years ago, residences like these are a symbol of modern Turkey, whose economic growth is partly fueled by the construction sector. This couple of architects has been sounding the alarm for years, denouncing collusion between politicians and housing developers seeking to build always faster and for less money.
They give construction permits for fields or land on a fault line. Floors are added without permission, and there are too few inspections. All this leads to buildings collapsing and so many dead.
Now the courts are getting involved, but despite regular warnings from the European Court of Human Rights, Turkey struggles with the independence of its judiciary and transparent investigations. Still, this lawyer believes the current circumstances may be a game changer.
I cannot say the system works perfectly in Turkey. There are many human rights violations and breaches of the state of law. But this situation goes above and beyond. Many people are dead. Many cities are damaged. No one is willing to take the risk anymore. No one can dare to take bribes or give in to pressure.
Dozens of developers have been arrested since February 6th, but not a single politician who delivered a faulty permit. This natural catastrophe has convinced many Turks that changes must be made to be better prepared for the next time.
That video from our internationally affiliated network, France 24, and some of the things that was said by the commentators in the video, Keaton, with regards to collusion, with regards to public officials turning a blind eye to allow contractors to have expedited construction, faster, cheaper, on a fault line. You know, we don't necessarily have it to that extent with regards to our construction woes. But we just had a situation where floods mashed up roads, and we had a highway going on the southwest of Trinidad on the coastline that also, you know, broke apart. We have a situation where people build in flood-prone areas, and we do wonder, well, the public official who's supposed to prevent that, what's going on there? All of these damages, not all of it is because your house that you've had for 50, 60 years was flooded. It's because your house that you recently got in a flood-prone area potentially was flooded. So, and then of course there's the construction on the mountain ranges and the hills, to what extent that now impacts the flow of water or the ability for the land to retain water, and then further impact flooding.
I've been told that you cannot beat the quality of construction that Trinidad and Tobago experienced long ago. I'm talking about 90s, 80s, 70s, go back as compared to today. And that's the thing. Here in TNT, there seems to be no level of quality assurance when it comes to building codes. Town and country planning is essentially an office which takes your calls and then completely forgets about you. You know, once you have constructed your building, who comes to inspect to see that's actually up to quality, which is something that should be in place. Mm-hmm. Even with respect to permission for building a certain type of property or a certain kind of construction within a certain area, it seems as though we've completely forgotten the difference between residential and commercial, and all that is a part of the problem. All that could affect the drainage system, for example. But you just used the example of roads. I'm not entirely sure who inspects roads across Trinidad and Tobago when they're completed, but the quality of roads that we're getting for the amount of money that we're spending on it, it's an insult.
Or what we're not spending because we're not getting any repairs.
So I think overall, who do we blame? Now, in the instance of Turkey, the example has been given of collusion, as you would have just pointed out. When it comes to housing development projects across Trinidad and Tobago, or even just buildings, that governments are given out by, contracts are given out by the government, it is often suggested that before the bidding process has been completed, before the tender process has been completed, now this is suggested, I can't say for sure, because I don't know, that the government already knows who's going to get it. The government already knows the price of which they're coming at. And all of that is a part of the problem. People have said that if a strong earthquake were to rock Trinidad and Tobago, when I say strong, I don't necessarily mean as high as a 7.9. If we just hit anywhere past 6.5, you're going to see
Trinidad, it has to be close.
You're going to see a lot of buildings, unfortunately, topple over.
Well, look at the situation with the slab of concrete that fell on the child. Now, granted, day-to-day maintenance is not going to keep concrete from falling apart. There has to be something with regards to the construction, because as far as I'm aware, a concrete structure done correctly, once there's no sort of unanticipated stress on it, earthquakes or physical damage or whatever. It'll more or less stand there. Look at, I think it's Pantrimbago's building that's just off the highway, that's just been wallowing there in the bush on that corner of the highway for a couple of decades now. I mean, the structure is more or less there. Meanwhile, the Red House, which was recently refurbished, a chunk of its roof fell.
So did the gate.
Right? Yeah, well, the gate fell almost, within the first month of handing it, of giving it, this is the newly refurbished Red House. Gate falls. We barely took control of it. Unless somebody somehow managed to damage that gate within that time period, which, I don't know, maybe it happened, they didn't tell us, I don't know why.
You see, it's a mixture of two things. As I said, it's a mixture of the relevant authorities not doing their job, and two, the quality that local contractors, and in some instances it was a foreign contractor who sought the restoration of the Red House, that is just honestly cheating the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I am very, very concerned that should a huge disaster hit us or affect us, then, what's going to happen then? What are we going to do? Are we going to rush to Turkey, as the Turkey government has done, to try and arrest officials after this entire situation has happened? And even then, President Erdogan hasn't taken any responsibility for himself or for his actions or his government's actions. He just sought to actually divert attention away from his government's actions, focusing on private building contractors. Is that something that could happen here in Trinidad and Tobago as well? Of course it's something that could happen here in TNT as well. But it doesn't even take that. Moving away from government responsibility for just 1 second. Let's just acknowledge personal responsibility as well.
Yeah.
You know that you're not supposed to build a certain way. You know you're not supposed to, if it is that your roof, and just bear in mind, this is all some people could afford.
Yes.
This is all some people could afford. So let us acknowledge that factor. But if you have a roof of galvanized sheets that are not actually screwed down, but you have bricks just thrown across it to try and weigh it down, if you have a strong enough storm in TNT, as we have seen with previous instances of heavy rain, strong wind, that sort of weather, that roof could fly off. The whole structure could come down. So a certain level, a certain degree of personal responsibility about how you go about constructing your own place.
But the situation in Turkey goes even beyond that, because that is a situation you could survive, right? Most likely. But in Turkey, we're talking about, we're going to build less than safe buildings or questionably safe buildings in an area that's on a fault line, and it seems as though everybody got complacent because for about 20 years they didn't have any earthquakes, and then as the bad luck would have it, they get more or less two kind of back-to-back, both over 7.0, right? I think one was 7.6. I think the other one might have been 7.8. So both might have been over 7.5. Back-to-back, and it decimates it decimates apartment building, high-rise structures, right? I mean, there is one situation where now a visiting volleyball team, two volleyball teams, 11 to 13-year-olds, and their chaperones, they more or less they all perished. And now I do have to ask, we have a situation, okay, with regards to our high-rises, with regards to our schools, because we're building these schools, to what extent are we confident in all of these school constructions? And when these things happen, they got complacent, right? Are we going to be complacent? Because for us, it's even easier. We don't have that earthquake or that hurricane, to say it happened once before in our lifetime and it could randomly happen again. We don't even have that. But to say that some emergency like that won't happen, perhaps it could be a flood. We've seen floods already. Perhaps we might get a flood where, people actually perish this time as opposed to just losing financial property and whatever.
I would not wish that upon any nation.
I'm not going to wish it.
No, I know.
But,
I know. But you see, as you mentioned, building codes, building on a fault line. To what extent is that analysis done before building is put up here in TNT? The second thing is...
the flood-prone area part is really the closest analogy of complacency.
Right. And the second instance is with respect to foundations here in TNT. Are our foundations built to the exact depth? Is it built to the exact quality?
I think that there was a high-rise tower in Glencoe that, every now and then you would look at it. Is it leaning? It looks like it's leaning.
Well, you see, because foundation is one thing, quality of the material, like the quality of the steel involved, the grade of the cement, a simple little thing such as the grade of the cement is extremely important. How you build your foundation is important. Here in TNT, I have retaining walls. Good retaining walls are something that you don't see much of anymore.
How we reclaim land is also a situation. But to go even further, what happened in the earthquake was roads got heavily damaged by the earthquake. It impacted the response times. And the people are complaining about the response times. To some extent, it's not the government's fault. When you road, I saw one image of a road being totally torn up a highway. We've had that similar situation as well. When we have issues with flooding that we seem to have every year, and this year the road systems was heavily affected, and we saw that in one case, in a couple cases in Mayara, I think, where rescue efforts were not as easy. And we know the North Coast has its own challenges as well with regards to things like that. To what extent now are we just hoping that the emergencies kind of remain as we expect them to be and they don't get any worse? Because the construction is probably going to continue. The clearing of trees from the mountain range is probably going to continue, etc., etc. Reclaiming land, trying to put roadworks on reclaimed land or semi-reclaimed land next to the coast, etc. All of these things are probably going to continue.
The thing is,
at what point is it going to fall apart?
I will conclude by saying, with respect to companies such as Digicel, with respect to agencies such as Town and Country Planning, there needs to be investigations to the extent that, whether it be internal or external, because you see GSE meetings all the time, but GSE meetings need to focus on this as well. Town and Country Planning seems as though it's just a hollow office with souls there to try and answer your phone call. It's very difficult to get through to them. I remember a call from Maraval saying that he was trying to get through to them for the longest while, and nobody was taking his calls. Town and Country Planning, Digicel, quality assurance, and the operations of these businesses. Because acting ASP is right. I'm not making any excuses for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service not doing their job with respect to finding individuals who park on the main road. But he made a very valuable point on who gave permission for all these businesses to actually be on the main road with no services such as parking. Not only that, in residential areas now, well, what is supposed to be residential areas...
Wasn't Woodbrook?
You see, exactly. And look at what residents in Woodbrook are going through because of the commercialization of Arapita Avenue. It's the same thing that's taking place around St. Augustine. St. Augustine, for example, is supposed to be primary. It's supposed to be residential. It's becoming a lot more commercialized. So the unfortunate thing is that this permission is being granted, and these buildings of such nature in residential areas could also hamper it, such as I mentioned, a simple little thing such as drainage, but quality assurance is not there, and that needs to be done. That needs to be done a bit more. So, Town and Country, wherever you are, we're looking for you. We're giving out a reward this morning for anybody who finds them.
I just want to wrap by saying, it might not be just like Turkey, but as I said before, the consequences of these things, they're not always going to be severe, but we'll see it in other ways, like you pointed out with the Eastern Main Road and the parking situation. And the problem is when our bureaucracy requires us to grease the wheel just to function normally, then it makes it easier for actual corruption now, where I'm not greasing the wheel to get what technically I'm entitled to. I'm greasing the wheel to cut corners and to bypass regulations.
Well,
it makes it easier for those things to happen. So
you will be entirely surprised how valuable or how powerful a rubber stamp is here in Trinidad and Tobago. Anyway, folks, let's take a break here now on Talking Points. And when we return, well, welcome our guest this morning. Stay tuned.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
It's a fantastic February at Massage Haven as we celebrate Valentine's Carnival and our 1-year anniversary. For the entire month of February, take advantage of our special packages. For Valentine's, show your love with our lovebirds and I Just Adore You packages. Carnival, let's help you glow with 20% off on all sauna and massage combos. And as we turn 1 year old, special complimentary Massage Haven tokens of gratitude and keepsakes within our anniversary week. Massage Haven, 157B, Monroe Road, Cunupia.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Sing for your lover, baby, sing for your lover.
But that is not the song.
That is my version for the Valentine's Day promo on WESN.
WESN presents its Valentine's Day promotion, Sing for Your Lover.
Send us a video of the best rendition of your favorite love song for the one you love. All contestants have a chance to win a variety of exciting prizes. Send us your entries to thecontentcapital@gmail.com. All videos will be posted to our social media pages and will be shown on WESN.
Well, okay then. Let me sing for my lover. Let me sing for my lover.
My lover.
Sponsored by Indus Merchant. Joy, beautiful by nature. Massage Haven. Sweet slices, sweet for you. Luna Restaurant. A.A. Lakis, Rosabella, non-alcoholic wine, and Iliada olive oil.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Talking Point, the only station in the country broadcasted in HD. And we are joined today by, well, an old friend who we've had on the program in one of the very beginning, early days. And I'm speaking about Mr. Michael Frank of Frankie Tours. Technically, it's a small business, but one would argue that he is the biggest tour operator in the island of Tobago. Good morning, Mr. Frank.
Good morning, good morning. Good morning to the panel and good morning to all of Trinidad and Tobago and all listening audience. Nice to be here.
So we have a bit of a delay, but we're still going to go with it. Mr. Frank, first of all, basic question, how has Tobago's recovery been from your perspective? As a man on the ground, you're part of tourism, you might have other business interests, you might have friends in other areas of the private sector. How has the recovery been for you, what you've seen?
Well, we are seeing quite a speedy recovery and a constant recovery. It's getting better every day. I mean, there are some gray areas still, but as you know, there are small kinks that you have to get out as we get through. So I would say it's on a positive note and it's growing. It's getting better.
Well, sir, I'm just wondering, well, that's excellent news, actually. We don't often hear that.
I think there might be some technical difficulties.
Yes, there is speedy recovery in Tobago, but slow internet across the island, so that is probably what's causing it, But I just wanted to ask, even though there is speedy recovery, you just mentioned there are some gray areas. Could you be more specific as to what these gray areas may be?
All right, so mainly I think it has to do a lot with the airlift and the boat transportation. For instance, Panorama has just concluded, and there was a massive backlog of people stranded on Tobago. And I was reading an article this morning, and basically it was for the most simple of things, where they say the fast ferry is licensed for 900 passengers, yet they could only take 500. I mean, this is very simple logistic. Even if they are shortfall in life jackets, I mean, what is so difficult in just getting some life jacket from any other sources? Even if the boat does not have it, they could find it. I mean, this is our country. We have to make sure things is working in our favor. Trinidad and Tobago is our liquor paradise. So simple things like this should not cause a backlog or a delay. These are things that should be sorted out in a minute. Somebody has to pick up the mantle to fix these simple things. And it's not just the sea bridge, it's also the air bridge. They know in advance how many people they have booked for every single flight. They can easily make adjustment to suit. If it means bringing in new flights or it means adding bigger planes, something has to be done to fix this problem. It's been going on too long. Somebody has to take up the mantle to fix these small kinks.
Well, Mr. Frank, of course, there's a new executive administration in the THA, relatively new. They've been there for a year. I don't know if necessarily for this issue how much influence they would have on it, but are these the people who you're hoping will finally fix certain issues in Tobago? What is your opinion of the current THA administration and their job performance so far?
Well, I'm going to give them about a 50%. I mean, I'm a big part of the party. But at the same time, right has to be right and wrong has to be wrong. They have a lot to do to make people happy. I mean, as again I said, this is our country. Simple situation like this, they should step in and say, okay, this has to be fixed today. Instead of having all these small bickering between them, they need to come together for the benefit of the country. There are too much small bickering. And I mean, as I said, I am a supporter of the party. I'm a big supporter of the party. But I don't want to see the internal problem, because the internal problem should not spill out into the general public. That should be kept indoors. But the public should see a united front going forward, fixing all these small problems. They came to power with the promise that they're going to fix problems. And here they are stalling with petty talks. They need to fix the problem.
Well, they've split from Mr. Duke and the name of the PDP. So you said you're support of the party. I assume your support is now continued with the executive and whatever political entity they might reform under?
Well, my support is actually standard. I have not switched any side. I actually like the party together. I know that they already are switching the party, but I am not supporting that switch. I want to see they united. You know, as everything, united is more powerful. United is stronger. So I don't want to hear about the split. I want them to fix the split and go ahead as the party is supposed to go ahead. Because if they don't fix the split, it will cause problem for them in the long term. You know, people are undecided as to which side to pick. And if they're undecided as to which side to pick, of course we're going to go back to our old party. We don't have a problem going back to our old party. And this is not a threat to them, but I'm just hoping that they can get their act together for the benefit of the country.
Well, I want to get back to the conversation of small businesses on the ground in Tobago. You know, a couple of weeks ago, actually I think it was late last year, we spoke to Mr. Chris James across in Tobago with respect to the recovery of the hotel industry and to what labour was like on the ground, and he was saying that they're initiating more training programs and he was hoping for more support. But is labour available in Tobago? Do the Tobagonians want to work and are willing to go back out to work, especially within small businesses and small business enterprises, knowing that these businesses are still going through a recovery process?
Well, I lost half of your conversation but from what I get from you, some people are willing to work, but as you know, our country are very laid back. So the shortfall from the laid back can be filled with other options. I mean, we have a lot of influx of foreign people now on the island. They can fill the gaps. They're actually very excellent worker. Some of them have an even better working standard than us. You know, we have a very laid back type of attitude in Trinidad and Tobago, especially from the hospitality side, where we are lackadaisical. And it's not just the people on the outside who need a job, but it's also coming from the government sector, and especially from the government sector. People who work for the government or for the state makes a salary. And because of that, they don't really care too much about what happens on the outside. They have a job, they get paid, and that is about it. Let me just draw a small reference. Let's start with, for instance, immigration. Somebody comes into the country. Immigration is the first point of contact. These people in immigration can be so aggressive or angry. I mean, I don't know if you have your personal problem at home, but that should not come to work. When a tourist comes into the country, regardless if it's a foreign tourist or a local tourist, they should have a smile on their face. They should be ready to greet and welcome. The tourists don't start outside, they start there with them. And this is only a reference. You know, too much people complain that when they enter the country, they feel afraid, they feel scared, they feel like if, you know, they're going to a prison and not to an island of fun. These people need to be trained to reach and greet. They should be smiling, they should be welcoming, they should assist with people handbags and people baggages. You know, another reference. Swedish lady was talking to me yesterday, and she was telling me that the same thing about immigration, where she had a child in her hand and she was pushing a pram, and she couldn't get through the door. And there are so much of them sitting there, not one of them would assist just to even open the door for her to get out. These are simple things that makes a very bad impression on our country. And it goes all the way down the line, all the way down the line. People who think that they already have a job and they make money does not make any type of approach towards helping the tourism section. And I think it has to do with training. The country has to be trained on a tourism basis where every single aspect of where you go, you must feel friendly. People must feel invited. You know, I could just point out to Castor, for instance. That's a small village on the northern side of Tobago. And when you go in there, everybody, the village is the tourism. Everybody has a nice smiley face. Everybody has something good to say. Everybody knows how to laugh and smile with you. And that is what we want for the general public.
But sir, if I may just, if I may ask you, you said training, and you know, a lot of people have suggested training as well, but the other difficult thing is that how do you train people who might not be receptive or do not want to train? They're not interested, and they seem to not care. So how do you really go about resolving this issue, or trying to train such individuals who cannot be trained or don't want to develop themselves?
Well, it's time for change. Change them. It's as simple as that. Give them a backstage job. Let them sit in the back and do some paperwork. And let somebody who wants to pick up the mantle be friendly and be forthcoming. Come to the front. We have a lot of new faces and a lot of new people. Bring somebody. Those who want to be trained, train them. Put them in the forefront. Put those who does not want to be trained, you're not firing them, but put them in the back. Let them do some paperwork in the back. And let somebody else who want to be the front of Tobago step forward and pick up the mantle.
Do you think that tourism is a key industry that Tobago really needs to develop, or is it that Tobago would be fine doing something else?
No, I think tourism is a key industry. And every industry is important. Not just tourism, but every industry is important. But tourism is a good way you can start. You know, many countries in the world are not fortunate like us to have oil and gas and other resources. Let's pick Barbados, for instance. Their only market is really tourism. And look how they are doing. They have 90% more tourism than Tobago. You know, so the GDP of their country is based on tourism. Why the GDP of Tobago cannot be based on tourism? We just have to pick up and get pace. And it starts everywhere. And not just starting with the government, but it starts with you, the local people as well. Everybody has to pick up the mantle and do something to the improvement of tourism.
Well, Mr. Frank, I know we spoke about tourism and what you would like to see, but is there any other thing, just one other thing, that you would like to see right now, as soon as possible, changed to try to improve the quality and conditions of Tobago?
Well, there's so much, I don't even know where to start. But, all right.
Just one.
I think one of the biggest problems we have would be fixing that A and C bridge. I think that is the most important. With fixing the A and the C bridge, not just between Trinidad and Tobago, between Trinidad and international as well, it can make a very big difference in everything. And we need to get more flights, we need to get more people investing in the country who could make a positive impact. I am seeing there's a whole lot of new hotels coming on stream and a whole lot of new industry coming on stream. That's a plus. But our country has a very small population, and the only way to grow it is by investment.
Okay, we just have about a minute left. With that being said, I mean, is Tobago reliant too much upon Trinidad for investment?
Yes, Tobago is reliant too much on Trinidad. Tobago needs to be able to do things on its own. You know, I was by a very young guy when a couple of days ago. I think his name was the Green Manor Hall up in Mason Hall. And this guy is so innovative. He starts off just by himself. He harnessed the power of nature by bringing in all the hummingbirds to feed and nest in. He makes a very, very beautiful dinner, very beautiful breakfast. And I was very impressed with this one simple guy could come together and put it. I think his name was Bobby Hall, Woody. That was his nickname, he told me. And I was very impressed with him, very, very impressed. We need more of those type of people. That is not solely dependent upon government or upon Trinidad, but making your own investment right here, trying to find a niche where nobody else is doing, and open up the whole thing, open up the whole country so that people could come here and find new things to do that they didn't even know exist. This needs to be explored. All those micro businesses all around the island that is showing great potential needs to be given a push so that they can explore, makes the whole country better. And in that case, avoid all the dependence upon Trinidad. And it's not just tourism, it's agriculture, it's fishing, it's all sectors can do that.
Well, sir, I want to thank you very much for joining my co-host Sean and I on Talking Point, and we appreciate your presence and for giving us some insight as to what's taking place on the ground. We certainly look forward to having a conversation with you in the future, but for now, keep well and thank you all the very best.
Thank you, Mr. Frank.
Thank you very much.
And don't
Thank
miss
you,
out
guys.
on Frank's
Nice to see
stories.
you again.
Have a good one, sir. Keep up. All right, folks. Bye-bye. Folks, let's break for news on the hour. We'll be right back after this.
Here's your WESN News on the Hour. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Woman gunned down in Point Fortin. TTPS assures adequate manpower for Carnival. Prohibition of glass bottles during Carnival 2023 will be enforced by the TTPS. And internationally, Turkey girl rescued after being trapped in rubble for 7.5 days. Now for the details. Police are investigating a gun attack on a woman which occurred in Point Fortin on Monday. Reports say around 8 a.m., Sabrina Thomas was standing in her mother's yard when she was approached by a man who fired several shots at her. She slumped to the ground. Thomas was reportedly shot in the chest and was taken to the hospital. 45-year-old Thomas was said to have succumbed to her injuries. With the climax of Carnival 2023 just 1 week away, the TTPS is giving the assurance that all officers are expected to be on hand for patrols during the Carnival period. ASP Ashraf Ali spoke via WESN's Talking Point on the issue.
I know that they are pulling together all the resources available for the police service. The police service really and truly is about give or take 7,000 plus police officers. We will have officers who are on vacation. The Commissioner of Police, as historically placed, does during Carnival, all persons leave are restricted, so they're called off for duty. So we'll have a number of officers coming back off the leave for Carnival Monday and Tuesday. So we wait to see how many officers we can get on the streets because there's a lot of activities going to take place, and these officers are distributed throughout the 10 divisions in Trinidad and Tobago.
The prohibition of glass bottles during Carnival 2023 will be enforced by the TTPS. Acting ASP Ishmael Pitt provided some guidelines for citizens to be guided.
This prohibits persons from serving or consuming beverages in glass bottles within the vicinity of a carnival event in any public place during the period of Carnival. Persons are also prohibited from having glass bottles on their persons during the Carnival period, which refers to that Juve morning period, 4 a.m. on Monday the 20th of February 2023, to the ending of Carnival, 12 a.m. on Wednesday the 22nd of February 2023.
If the regulations are broken, persons can be fined $1,000 or imprisoned for 6 months. In international news now, a young girl has been saved from the rubble of a block of flats in southern Turkey more than a week after the devastating earthquake struck. Miri had been trapped in the ruins for 178 hours, 7.5 days. Video showed workers cheering and shouting, "God is great," as she was lifted out of the darkness. Several others were saved on Monday, including a 13-year-old boy trapped for 182 hours. But rescuers are becoming rarer as the death toll passes 35,000. Well, that was your news to the hour on WESN. I am Denise Martin. Thanks for watching. With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal. Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Only on WESN Content Capital.
Welcome back to the program. Thank you very much to Ms. Denise Martin for news on the hour. Folks, let's get straight into the conversation. Well, we'll open up the phone lines, but in a moment, let's get into the question of the day.
This question goes back to our first topic, and it is, do you have any hope for the PCA to successfully intervene and investigate the case of the missing ammunition? So, call us, let us know. I mean, I would say no, just based on track record, just based on the level of expectation that I have for any situation that involves the PCA, just given experience. But call in and let us know what you think with regards to this situation or with regards to the PCA in general. Of course, we also spoke about CARICOM, we spoke about Tobago, we spoke about bypassing regulations, what that meant in Turkey, what that could mean in TNT. A lesson for us to learn if only we would pay attention and listen.
Now folks, join the conversation. The phone lines are now open. Call in and join us on Talking Point this morning. Feel free to express your thoughts and opinions, but please be respectful, not only to Talking Point, but to all the other viewers. And please be mindful of the time of your contribution, as well as kindly turn on the volume on your set when you are calling in. And please, please do not call in at the 11th hour. We're out of time. So call in now and join us. The phone lines are open. I was just reading actually another story earlier yesterday where, and how often are we hearing about this now, and how often is the acting ASP speaking about stolen cars?
Yeah.
But cars that are being advertised on social media,
Yep.
and then when you go to actually get it sold, it's a robbery taking place. We'll get into that particular story in a bit. We have a caller on the line with us from Digger Martin. Good morning, caller.
Morning.
Hi, morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning, morning.
Morning. My heart goes out to the people in Turkey, but in Trinidad and Tobago, our general construction standards are set very high. From all our construction offices via the via city corporation, etc. in each area, there are guidelines to follow, and they even provide guidelines to you. But however, we have untrained people doing some construction work, and you see the corners of the building not being cast because there's a methodology to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And then most supervised building by the city in whichever area you work in, the standards are followed, right? In relation to my train of thought in there this morning.
That's fine, caller.
In relation to Carnival and the crime rate, when I saw the crime rate at the end of December, if I had the authority to, I would have just put Carnival. Because our people really do need to get our act together.
Yeah, I agree.
In relation to training of persons, boy, I don't know how we're gonna get past that hurdle.
Yeah.
Because even the Venezuelans who come in here, they underskill, they're willing at first, but when they fall into the environment, it's another story.
Yeah.
All right,
caller. Thank you very much for your contribution. If you were to be the man to cut Carnival, you'd be the most hated man here in TNT, even if you give an excellent justification.
Even with COVID right on our doorstep, the government was like, no mask.
Caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
With respect to your question, I think we would see some resolution to this, purely because of the fact that who are the owners of that ammunition. I don't think Nigeria Alfonso is going to leave that lying, and she's going to make a spectacle, and that is going to force them to have some action. That's one. About
hello.
All right. I think this has happened before. If you can't call back in, we'll take the call, but we have a next call from Shagonas. Good morning, caller. Good morning. Morning.
I want to go on to this talk about the NIS. After I hang up, then you all make some very strange statements, talking about maybe the actuarial reviews put up small increases that was not sufficient. When I pointed out to you that in a period of 5 years, they raised the NIS minimum right, to 4 times, that's 400% of the maximum. When nobody complained, how on earth you could call that too small an increment? And today you start to bash town and country planning. Is there any government agency operating properly except the Ministry of Health? That is all that you have, unless you have any questions.
Well, you see, I'm afraid to actually respond to your question in case you might call in tomorrow. But
I'll do a quick response.
Is there any other agency?
With regards to NIS, though, I think the issue is it's currently, as much as they increased it way beyond what it should have been in the past, even that increase is slowly but surely becoming insufficient for the needs of the operation.
The actual review will tell you what you have to do to get whatever you want.
Well, okay, fair enough.
But that wasn't used, as I pointed out to you in detail.
Yeah. All right, caller. Thank you very much for your. Yes, thank you very much for your contribution. Do have a good day. Caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Yes, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened with my contribution. How much you heard?
The first part, but when you wanted to move on from the PCA, that's where you got cut off.
Okay. With respect to Mr. Frank.
Yes.
I think if nothing new needs to happen in Tobago, you know, Sean. No new enterprises, no new initiatives. If they fix what they have, and I think you can attest this, if it is that they go out there and they fix what they have, Tobago will be such a better place. Let me give you an example. When you go down to Stourbay in the morning, it is so ridiculous to see those gentlemen, those young men, who have those stores with the nylon pool and stuff. Sit down there, indisciplined, no proper uniform, smoking marijuana. It is not a good look.
Yeah.
And those are the little things that they need to fix. If those things are fixed, Tobago would be a much better place. People would be a little more inviting. And one more thing I want to say, with respect to, he talked about immigration. And unfortunately, there's a problem all over the Caribbean. You get the same attitude in Barbados, Lucia, Antigua. You get it. So I was glad that you all brought somebody on that's not a politician for Tobago that have a frank conversation.
All right, cool. Have a good one. Take care. I think the point that you're making with respect to these tour operators, the example used was by Stourbay, there might be some who will make the argument that it's the salt of the earth, and that alone is an attraction to visitors. Foreigners might come and see the authenticity, I suppose, of these young men, some with brass, however they dress, how they talk, how they act, smoking marijuana. Some people might actually make an argument, well, that's what attracts a lot of foreigners or tourists, because it seems as though it's something genuine and authentic.
At least right now, a good chunk of our foreign market is families. So that's where the weed, you kind of want to get away from that, right? But I understand what he's saying, because I know somebody who was working for Mr. Frank that got caught up in an altercation because it's essentially unregulated. It's an unregulated hustle, right? There's no rules by which they kind of operate. There's very informal rules, but then now when people want to kind of throw their weight around, and in that case it was actually literally, it caused a confrontation. So
very unfortunate.
So and you don't want that sort of energy or vibe to now spill over to your customer or your clientele, because they have local customers into this business too, but especially foreign customers.
Oh, we have a caller on the line with us from Tunapuna. Good morning, caller.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
You're on here.
I would like to find out what both of you have to say about this. The problem is, I would like you all to say something concerning all this wastage of our taxpayers' dollars. When you look around TNT, Trinidad and Tobago, we only seen projects gone up halfway and everything remain like that, falling apart. And nobody does nothing about it. And we will like an accountability concerning that. And the problem is, we want to know why they only...
Hello?
All right, caller, we're sorry that you got cut. I heard the first part. There was a question you wanted to ask. There is some time left if you want to call back in to ask your question. Caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I call to make a small contribution in terms of the building code, right? Now, there's something called physics. There's a physics standard, world standard, that all the engineers, civil engineers in the world will subscribe, meaning that they are standardized way and formulas to build certain things and so on, whether it be a swimming pool, an airport, or whatever, right? So, whether it's in Turkey or Trinidad, that physics standard still applies. So, therefore, all employers who had the degrees and they went to university and they realized that they must adhere to that physics, and they didn't do it, it's criminal. Alright? Now, having said that, look at 7.5. Now, when you build a house normally that will accommodate winds up to 30-35 miles per hour. If it goes 25, you can't blame the man who built it, right? So if you want to build structures that will withstand a 7.5 earthquake, you know what you have to do, right? And I don't think you have anybody doing that right now. So therefore, it may not be correct to say that everything is because of the study work, right? Until they could prove that the physics standards should have been applied and still building still for long, then you could know. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear you, caller.
Yeah.
So the discussion in Trinidad, I've noticed, a lot of them talk about construction and design. Not once they ever mentioned physics standards, not once. FIDIC in capital letters. You could Google it.
All right, caller. Well, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you, caller.
contribution. We will look that up. We have a caller on the line with us from Kirap. Good morning, caller.
Hello.
Hi, morning.
You're on here.
Yeah, good morning to the panel. I want to speak about Tobago with the irregularity of those persons operating the reef service, the boat service, to go to the reef and island pool. Right? I think if you have personnel selling the tickets, if you don't have an outlet like a structure, a building, people want to purchase the ticket. If you have personnel hustling on the beach, it should be uniform. It should be regulated. You understand what I'm saying? You have them operating like beach bum. You run up into the tourist face and you're pushing your hand. A kind of hustle like how the maxi taxi touts operate, that is not professional at all. And going into Pigeon Point, long time they had a set of structure. It's a while I didn't go in there, but they had a lot of structure, people hustling cheese and bees and different things. But set aside a place for them to do it properly. We're looking to promote tourism.
Yeah.
And the last time I was going to Pigeon Point, they stopped me at the gate and told me I had to pay.
Yes.
So you all have been to Pigeon Point, right?
Yes, I've been there recently. Yeah.
Right.
It's still doing that, by the way.
When you hit this stretch and you're going about 200 meters, there's a gate before you're going to Pigeon Point Beach.
Yeah.
They stopped me there and told me I had to pay to enter. I'm using the beach facilities. I'm going to bathe. If I'm going to use the beach facilities, I could say I had to pay. In 1970, we marched to go in there and break down our gate and say Tobago is ours. We don't have to pay to go and use no beach. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you're going to use the beach facility, I
Yeah.
can see you're contributing. If you're going to use the beach, you're going to bathe and go back into your vehicle and head your way out. I don't think it should be. So you all can check on that from a place. Good
All right.
program, I love listening.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, the thing is with Pigeon Point, a lot of the facilities are privately operated, but the issue is when you do enter, there's two individuals actually the last time I went who said you have to pay to enter, and I ignored them. And the reason why I ignored them is because I was getting no form of receipt, I was getting no ticket, I was getting nothing official to say that I've paid. And in my opinion, I thought, hold on, this in itself is a hustle. With respect to the facilities, yes, people are hustling for that as well, chairs and different cabanas and whatnot. But overall, I must admit, you know, a different note, Pigeon Point is not my favorite beach, even though it's white sand and blue waters. The seaweed is terrible.
The thing is, it was a controversial issue that people were charged to go in by private ownership, and then when the government took it over, the practice remained. So I kind of, you know, technically it's more legal that the government is doing it, but I don't necessarily agree with it because, like you, I don't see...
Are we sure it's legal? Or we just assume because it's the government?
That's a good... Well, yes, because the illegality question came because the government owns the seafront.
Okay. Well, caller on the line with us from West Mornings. Good morning, caller.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Every day I look in our program and it's a fantastic program. I love your program. I can recommend your program for everybody. But today, all you can have a very happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you. Same to you, caller.
Thank you for the support. Thank you for the support and thank you for the greetings.
Happy Valentine's Day. We're actually hearing some of our directors
silly men
jumping
back there.
up, and yes, happy Valentine's Day to all of you, and thank you very much for your support and for your Valentine's greetings.
Back to the, as we have a moment, the unregulated glass bottom boat situation. Not only is it the professionalism of how you sell the tickets, but the price of the ticket. And this is now a point of contention, because I think I remember reading an article a while ago where a reporter or a vlogger was basically saying, when I asked the family next to me how much they paid, he realized he basically got scammed or scalped. So it's things like that as well. If we have situations, in the short run, that might make you some extra money, but in the long run, it might give that entire sub-industry a bad name and turn people off, turn travelers off from it.
Given that we live in a capitalist society, it's going to be difficult. The point is that what the caller from Europe was suggesting is that you have people in uniforms. San Fernando as well suggests you have people in uniforms, you have booths, and they sell tickets, but you can't put a price cap on it. I was about to say something crap, but you cannot put a price cap on it.
I wouldn't say put a price cap, but what happens is how it's being sold, you kind of make it as though I have the best price, and you do everything you can to not allow the potential customer to hear from the other sellers with regards to what their prices are.
You see,
so that's the thing. That's kind of artificial.
Where competition and capitalism comes into place. It's a similar thing that we could use with something I suppose you could say is a formalized industry or formal industry in TNT.
Okay, but there's a flip side to that. But
it's like for example milk, right? You have your competition, and people are now finding different ways and different strategies. I think the biggest one right now is saying that we are 100% local. We're not imported. Support us. You know, or the other brand is saying, well, listen, our quality is far superior because of our quality assurance and the fact that we have partners who are internationally affiliated. So the thing is that you can't put a cap. I understand what you're saying with respect to how people might get scammed. But if you were to formalize the industry to the extent that this caller from Kirp and Sankman was saying, with the ticket booth and the uniforms, competition alone will play its role.
Right. The thing is, the booth might say, okay, now I need to put my price, I need to have it in a sign or something like that, where it could be read. I'm not just telling you and you're taking my word for it. If you go back to your milk example, the point is I could see what the price of your competition is. It's literally right next to you, right? It's transparent. And that's the thing. The current situation, some of the hustlers try to limit transparency as much as possible. They don't necessarily like force it upon you, but they do whatever they can to kind of keep you away from the other
how so?
operators.
If I go up to one operator and I ask, what's the price of your operations? And they tell me, and then I say, all right, okay, well, if I'm interested, I'll come back and let you know. But then I go to another operator and I ask them that question.
Let's put it this way, most people might not necessarily want to do that with just like the pressure of somebody kind of being in their space trying to
I hear
sell
you,
them.
but I think people need to be smart about their money.
Remember, two people are on vacation, so they're not necessarily looking out for themselves in certain ways. And Tobago doesn't necessarily have that kind of reputation where, every small venture around the corner is going to scam you of your money, right? So this is actually, thankfully, something of a unique scenario where the competition, the hustling, it's a unique outcome, right? But if I'm on vacation and generally speaking, everything else seems above board and everything else has a certain pace, but now I have to be on guard and do all kind of negotiations and be wary in my head, I think it catches people off guard. And it leaves us, once you have to do that, yes, you could be concerned about your money. If I'm going to a tourist destination where that's the norm for just about everything I do, fine. I should know what I'm signing up for. But Tobago is not necessarily like that, right? But if I have to now do it when I don't want to, I'm not expecting to, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth, and I might want to I personally would want to distance myself from that situation, and that could mean not coming back to Tobago, because I don't want to deal with anything like that again, and I don't know how far widespread that is, because it's not part of the fabric of Tobago, but once I, as an outsider, experience it, now I'm like, ooh, maybe I don't know what this is like, and maybe I should just go somewhere else like Barbados or St. Lucia or whatever, what have you, where things are more normalized.
I hear you. I don't think it's more normal. I think throughout the Caribbean, even across the world, I think you have these hustlers and these scams.
Yeah.
So I mean, I hear you. You have to cater for every individual. You have to think about how an individual might react. I don't necessarily see somebody saying, I'm not going to go back to Tobago because of that. But I hear what the caller from San Fernando, I hear what the caller from Europe, I heard what Mr. Frank has to say. I'm hearing what you say. And whilst I still think, I will stick to my opinion that some people might argue, right? I agree that there should be some level of formality involved, but some people might argue there's a certain level of authenticity with the man smoking marijuana, the Rasta man smoking marijuana. People might already picture it and stereotype, oh, this is the creme de la creme of the Caribbean. Cool, I'm going with that.
I think the problem is Tobago needs to figure out what the overall tourism product has to be, and that's what Mr. Frank was saying. Or implying when he said everybody has to be welcoming. The whole of Castara is welcoming. We need immigration to be welcoming. All the airport workers, the taxi drivers, the tour operators, everybody that's going to interact with tourists needs to be welcoming. But it's not just foreign tourists, it's local tourists too. I had one Trinidadian local basically say that she never wanted to come back to Tobago, not because of the place where she was staying did anything wrong, but just because a neighboring business did something wrong, and she told the hotel where she was staying, I don't think I'm coming back. You didn't do anything wrong, but I just had one of the worst experiences of my life with some other employee from some other establishment. I'm not coming back.
I think the best experience that I've ever had in Tobago, I think
Brebs.
The best experience is actually beyond the normal tourist hotspots, beyond Store Bay, beyond Pigeon Point. When I went to this, geez, look at how it slips my mind now. What's new? It's his actual area of which he got. Roxborough. When I went to Roxborough, the welcome and the warmth that you receive from Tobagonians, the hospitality, meeting them for the first time, talking, laughing, telling me, listen, come back. Next time you come back, you must come to my home for lunch. You must come for dinner. You know, we'll show you around it. And this is from almost everybody within the area. You know, so I thought they were very accommodating, they were very kind, they were very nice. And I believe Frankie when he says you probably have to go beyond certain areas in Tobago, go to the little villages. Perhaps that is the true tourism.
As good as all that was, I know your best experience was the current road from Brems. Don't lie.
That was the best currents road ever.
Okay.
Yeah, best currents road ever. Can't beat that currents road. Crap, no, I want currents road. Anyway, I think that's where we have to close it off. Thanks for putting that in my head now. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Talking Point. That's my co-host Sean. Thank you to our directors and all our callers. Thank you to Frank. Remember, today is a good day to have a good day. And it should all go well. Well, we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.